Yeah, so we'll start with receivable configurations and we will see few transactions today. So before that, any clarification on the last session or anything that you have in finance modules?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, fine, no issue. Okay, so I'll start the configuration for receivable. So after
Okay.
receivable, we will basically see the CMS cash management.
Okay.
Okay, so to start with, to set the context, so basically, if you see here, so we don't have access for the user management responsibility. So, so this will be required when we are creating the bank and other things. Yeah, for basically to create the bank account, we don't need this access and the other things. When we will need access is that to give the LE access. So that is when we will need it. So I'll explain you that user management, what it will do and why do we use it, all those things. But apart from that, I'll be taking you through the vision operation configurations. Okay. Yeah. To start with, if you see our initial configuration will start from the system options. So the navigation, if you see from setup, we will have the systems. So under that, we have the system options. Okay. So here, so before we have this particular operating unit defaulted or auto-populated, so we have a profile option called default operating unit. So when we have specified this particular profile option, we will have the operating unit defaulted. So this fields will be blank, which means this will not have any data inside it. So if you see here, so I have given our, we have already filled in for the realized gain and realized loss. So basically what is realized gain and what is realized loss? So realized gain is something when I enter this particular receipt. So that is when I will have the Yeah, so that is when we will have the realized gain. So which means I have created the invoice and I have created the receipt, and which means
Excuse me. I have to. Receipt and receipt are same. Huh?
yeah, receipt only I'm saying.
No, receipt you don't know. Receipt or receipt.
Yeah, I mean basically it is receipt. Receipt in the sense receipt. A receipt is what I'm saying.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So basically, if you see here, so we have this thing realized gain or loss. So when
Okay.
we will have is that when we have the receipt entered in the system, which means I have collected so and so amount from the customer. So
Okay.
after receiving the amount, I will put or I will enter receipt. Okay.
Okay.
So, which means I have a foreign currency transaction involved in this business. So, in this, basically, what will happen is that I'll enter this one, what do you call, I'll say daily rates and I'll say other details of the currencies. So, after that, what I will do is that I will basically enter the transaction, which means invoice. So, after creating the invoice, I will create the receipt. So basically, so that is when I will have the foreign currency transaction get effect with realized. So if I have created only invoice, I haven't created the receipt. So which means this will go in unrealized gain. So it will be realized when I have created the receipt. Fine. Yeah. So this is about the what do you call the realized gain or loss account. And apart from that, we have tax account. So tax is nothing but the this is an expense account. So basically, when we are this depends on the localization as well. So most of the countries, if you see, we have taxes. So Middle East, we didn't have tax before maybe 4 or 5 years, but now if you see, even in Dubai or any other countries, we have the taxation involved. So, so in this case, what will happen is that this becomes mandatory even for Dubai or other countries. So since all over the world we have the taxation, so this becomes mandatory. Okay. And then we have unallocated revenue. So what is unallocated revenue? Which means we have earned certain point of revenue, but we haven't allocated to any specific lines. So those will be captured under the unallocated revenue account. And then we have the cross currency rate type, which means either it can be corporate or it can be user type. So there is a few difference between each. So user is something that I can just enter on the fly, and spot is something that based on the spot price we will update the currency, and corporate is the standard or you call the convention that is used by almost all the what you call clients or the customers, because it will have a default rate for a given day or maybe period or weekly or whatever the range that we wanted to have. So that is what about the corporate. So here in this case I have taken corporate. And then we have cross currency rounding account. So when we will use cross currency rounding account is that, let's say I use my functional currency is USD, and my foreign currency is euro, which means I'm trying to do a transaction which is in euro. So in this case, what will happen is that I might enter maybe 100.15 or 100.16. So 167, let's take this case. So if I wanted to round this off, I'll say 100.16 or 17. So this round of where should I keep, or where should this particular difference or the rounding should reside? So we are specifying the account here. And the next option is header level rounding. So which means it will calculate, it will not calculate only on the line. Instead, it will calculate for the header. Okay. And the other options are like common. We have the detailed distribution. So distribution is something that for one line we might have different distribution. So whether we wanted to have detailed information like the descriptive and the other things. Okay. And then we have automatic journal import. So which means whether we wanted to allow automatic journal import or how do we want to handle it. So when we say automatic journal import, then we have the days per cycle. So which means in this case, if you see, I have 30 days, which means I'm running this particular thing for once in a month. Okay, so that is the understanding. Let's say I say 15 days, which means I'll run twice in a month. Okay, so this will be our initial configuration. So after that, we will have the transaction and customers. So if you see here, we have certain controls in order to control user to not change any field or any updation in the application. If you see here, the first option would be allow changes to the printed transaction. So I have created an invoice as the transaction. So I have completed it. Irrespective of the accounting, what I have done is that I have printed this transaction, which means I have made physical copy of it. Okay. So so in this case, what will happen is that if I say allow change to printed transaction, even after printing this particular transaction, still I'll be able to make the transaction unless it is accounted. Okay. And then we have allow transaction deletion. So which means I can allow a user to delete it unless it is an accounted invoice. Okay. So the next option that we have is that allow payment of unrelated transaction. So what is payment of unrelated transaction is that let's say I have two business unit with the operating unit. So operating unit 1 and operating unit 2. So in this case, if I wanted to allow transaction between let's say I have one customer who will deal with both the operating units. So in this case, I will enable it so that I can receive unrelated transaction, which means the transaction didn't happen actually in the OU2, but whereas I have used it in a way that I can use either of the business unit. Okay, so that is the meaning. Okay, so after that, what we have is that show billing number. So we can show the billing number. So then we have just give me a minute. Hello.
Hello?
Yeah. Sorry for it. Yeah. So we'll start. So the next option that we have is that tax invoice printing option. So how do we want to handle our printing option for the taxation? So whether we wanted to have a total tax only, or we wanted to have item and the sum of it, or how do we want to have? So usual practice is to have either tax or we can use the itemize and sum. So when we have inventory based item, okay, then we have document number generation level. So document number is nothing but creating or generating the invoice number. So when do we want to have? So when we save it or when we say complete. Okay. So so that's it on the transaction controls. So after that, if you see, we have late charges. So what is late charges is that there will be few cases where we will charge from the customer when the payment has when the due has reached a certain level. So for those cases, we can utilize this functionality called late charges. So when we say as a late charge, which means system will start calculating. Okay. So here we have balance calculation. So how do we want to calculate our balances? Exclude. So here we have multiple options. So we have exclude post billing debit item, or we wanted to include the post billing debit item, which means post billing is nothing but after our due days. So whether we wanted to calculate those as well, or how do we want to manage it? So I'm just leaving this option, that is exclude post billing debit items. So which means system will not consider. Okay. Then we have something called interest invoice transaction type. So these are kind of what you call we specify to this particular operating unit. So this is the transaction type for the invoice, and this will be for debit memo and the other things. So this basically we will create in the transaction type. Anyway, we will see how to create transaction type and the other configuration. But for now, keep in mind that this is to attach where the interest invoice as a transaction type. So similarly, we will have for the other charges as well. Okay. So this will be our late charges configuration. And then we have something called auto invoice. So basically, auto invoice works on two things. So one is on the line ordering rule, and the other one is on the grouping rule. So basically, what is line ordering rule and what is grouping rule? So line ordering rule is nothing but it is set of an field or the attributes where based on this particular attributes, we are importing the transaction from the external system or the external what do you call modules or the application. Okay. So in this case, what will happen is that this multiple lines will be combined and it will be created as a specified line. Okay. So after creating this line, we wanted to create the invoice. So grouping rule will help us to create this particular invoice. So this two configuration will let us to create this particular invoice, and under invoice we will have the multiple lines. Okay. So basically, this will not be created as a manual. So instead, when we have the invoices that is coming from other systems, so that is when we will mostly use it. And for the other cases, we have the order management. Okay. So these are the options that we have for the auto invoice. Hello.
Hello?
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, so this is the functionality of having the auto invoices. So here, if you see, we have an option called purge interface tables. So which means, let's say we have imported 100 lines. So in this, maybe 50 lines has failed, but the rest of the 50 lines has processed, and we have imported it into our base tables. So now this 50 records that we have imported into our application, still it will reside in the interface table. So to delete this or to take away this particular data, what we will do is that we will run the program called purge interface data. Okay. So this will allow us to handle in terms of the space and the other things. Basically, this will involve the performance and the other things. So based on our load or the count of invoices that we will receive on a daily basis, so we will set up the maximum memory, and we will say the log file message level. Okay. And then we have the tuning. So tuning is nothing but the account segment that we are defining it here. So I have picked the account segment that is from our chart of account value. Okay. And we have system item. So system item is nothing but our inventory arc. So in this case, we have selected item. Okay. And and then we have territory. So territory, again I have selected here country. Okay. And then here we have customers. So for customers, we have automatic customer numbering. So this is on the customer, what do you call, the customer controls. So I said this is an automatic numbering, and we have site numbering. Again, this is an automatic, and we have create reciprocal customer. So what is reciprocal customer? So let's take a scenario where I have two customers, customer A and customer B. So for customer A, customer B is a vendor. So customer A has procured some item from customer B. So which means we bought some item from customer A, and in turn customer A has bought from the customer B. So instead of paying to customer A, he is asking to directly pay to customer B. So we will create a relationship, and we will create a reciprocal customer, so that we can pay directly to this customer called B instead of paying A. Okay. And then we saw the grouping rule. So this will be part of our auto invoice basically. So here we will have it. So this is part of it. So I have selected default, and maybe after system options, we will see what is line ordering rule and what is grouping rule. Okay. And then we have the logbots and the other configurations related thing. So to start with, what is basically logbots? So logbots is something what I call the service that is given by the commercial bank to their corporate customer, that they can upload the receipt directly based on the file that we receive from the bank. Okay, so the file will be always in DAT file or the prescribed format. So basically, we will take from there and we will have the control file and this thing. So after locating it, so basically, system reads this records and it will process. So based on what this will process is that it will have the matched rules. Based on the matching rule and the condition that we have specified, system will identify and it will create the invoices automatic, I mean the receipts automatically. And based on the condition that we have given, it will do the what do you call the matching the invoice with the receipt. Okay, so logbots we cannot see it since we need the other templates and these things. We have few dependencies. So theoretically, I can explain you. Maybe you just look into it and let me know if you have any queries or anything. We can take that. Yeah. And then we have this one. So this is mostly on the receipt automation, and we have a few things like the write-offs and refunds, the other things. So we'll start one by one. So we have split amount. So split amount is nothing but our this thing, what we call the collection part. So we have the other module that is what we call advanced collection. So in advanced collection, basically we will have a kind of a report where this particular amount, if this threshold has reached out, so so that is when we will need customers notice, or we will need the sales representatives to contact the respective customer. So we say this amount as an 10. So usually it will be more. It's not only 10. Okay, so based on the what do you call the average or the other engine that they have, so based on that we will set up the split amount. Okay, so after reaching this particular threshold, the customer name will appear in the collection report. So based on that, they can fast track their collection process. And then we have the discount basis. So if at all we are giving the discount, so how do we want to manage our discount? So either it is line or it is on the invoice, or we wanted to add it for the freight and the tax as well. So in this case, I'm just giving lines only. So which means always it is for the particular item. So item will be always in the line. So I'm selecting here line only. And then we have auto cache rule set. So auto cache rule set is to this is related to basically the logbots processing. So in logbots, if you see, so we have auto cache rule set where it will identify the invoices and it will apply to the receipt or the receipt. Okay. So this is the functionality of auto cache. And then we have days in sale outstanding calculation. So this we can have it again. This will come under mostly on the advanced collection part. So I'm just saying it as a 90 days. Okay, then we have sales credit. So again, this is with the advanced collection and the promotion other modules. Then we have something called write-off. So write-off, we can use it for two purposes. So either we can use it for the bad debts that we have given to the customer, but unfortunately for one or the other reason, we will not receive the amount from the customer. So what we will do in this case is that we will write off. So this will be one scenario that we will use the write-off. And the other scenario is that let's say we have 10 invoices with 100.25, 100.35 similarly. Okay, so this decimals whatever we are having it, so we will knock off with the write off. So this in longer run, what will happen is that this will become as thousands or two digit thousands or whatever the value. So what we will do is that we will have the write-offs defined here. So that is, we will give a limit from when where to where I can do the write-offs. So in real time, we will not have the negative values. In this case, I have given the negative value, that is minus 9,000. I mean minus triple nine triple nine. Okay. And then we have allow unearned discount. So unearned discount, so basically what is discount and when do we use this concept called discounts? So discount is something that I'll allow my customers to take it. So when they make the early payment. So let's say the cycle of payment or the receipt will work on the basis of the maturity or the due date. So let's say I purchase an item on 1st of November, and the what do you call the net days that I have defined or agreed upon is 15 days. So my payment will get matured on 15th of November. So in this case, I put additional condition to the customer stating that if we receive the payment before 10 days, we will give 2% discount or maybe 5% discount. When this is received after 10 days, so this will be considered as an maybe 1% or 2% discount. But when it is 15 days, which is actual days that is defined, so we are not going to give any discounts. So here, if I have paid this particular amount, so which means I'm taking or consuming this particular discount. So this is where I will say this is an earned discount. So unearned discount is something that I didn't utilize it. Okay. So whether we wanted to have this option is what we are trying to say. Okay. So the other options also related to discount, that is discount on the partial payment. So if we disable this option, which means it will work only on the full payments, not on the partial. And then we have a required salesperson. So if we enable this option, then the salesperson should be mandatory in the transaction page. And then we have a required billing location for the receipts. So which means whether we wanted to have a billing location for the receipts as well. So for the transaction or the invoice, definitely we are going to have. But if we enable this, maybe we will have it for the receipt as well. Okay. So apart from that, we have a few printing options. So that is print remit to address and home country. So basically, for each customer, we will have the remit to address in order to have the receipts and the other payments received from the customer. Okay. So then we have the refund part. So refund is something that there are two cases. So the first case is that I procure some item, let's say laptop. So after procuring, I pay this particular, or let's say this is an Walmart. So in case of Walmart, I just walk in and I procure and pay, and I take back the item that I procured. So in this case, I see after 2 days, so there is a warranty period of let's say 10 days written. So I come to home and I notice that I have a defective product. So I go to shop immediately and I raise a request to refund this particular item. So I don't want to swap it. So I wanted to get the refund for this purchase that I made. So in the earlier case, if you see, if I wanted to swap or if I wanted to only reverse this, so what will happen is that I'll just say reverse the transaction and transaction will be reversed. But whereas if I say I wanted to basically refund this particular amount, so it will pass through the payable module. So in payable module, we will get a refund request. So from there, we will process it and we will hand over to the customer whatever amount that we have received. Okay. So then we have credit card payment method and the bank account payment method. So if you wanted to have, or if we have a business case where we will have credit card payment method, so we will define it and we can attach it so that for this particular operating unit, system will default this credit card payment method. So anyway, we can override at the transaction level, but still, if you wanted to auto populate, we can attach it here. And then we have auto resets. So auto resets is something like we can say the auto lockouts again. So there we have the receipts that is importing from the file that we received from the bank. So here uh, on every 500 receipts based on this thing that I have given, on every 500 receipts that I'm creating. So for invoice and the receipts are the receipts, I'll have 500. So for each 500, I will have the commit function. So that is the meaning. And then we have the chargeback functionality. So what is chargeback? So chargeback will work something like this. So I have customer A. So customer A has procured an item, and the outstanding is 1 lakh. So the due line is on 15th of November. So today is 16th of November. So customer comes to me and customer is saying that I don't want to extend it anymore. Let's open a new bill and close this bill, and we will have this bill added to this particular new bill. Okay, so that I can close it entirely in 1 or 2 days is what customers request. So in this case, what will happen is that we will create a chargeback. So this chargeback will close the lines or the outstandings, and it will add up to the new invoice. Okay, so this is the functionality of chargeback. And then we have default currency, so that is understandable. And then we have the source of territory. So this we can give it either at the sales representative, or we can give customer site location, or we can even give the ship to site. Okay, so in this case I'm just leaving as it is, since we are not using the territory flex field and other functionalities. And we have application rule set. So basically, application rule set is something that it will allow us to define that how do we want to manage our revenues, and how do we want to manage that. So whether we wanted to apply first for line, and whether we wanted to distribute the tax across, or we wanted to distribute all the lines across. So basically here I have selected line and tax prorate, or we can select line first and tax after as well. Okay, so then we have automatic matching rule set. So this is again for the logbox configuration. So based on this matching rule, basically system will picks up the invoice, and it will process the receipts. So this is what we have it in the system option. So any doubt?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on. Okay, so after this, so we have something called transaction type. So before that, we have auto accounting. Okay, before going to even auto accounting, I'll explain. I'll take 2 minutes to explain about the auto invoice configuration. Okay. So for example, I'm taking this particular line. Let's say invoice line order. So if you see here, so I have added, so this is not limited to one line or two line. I can add n number of line. This depends on my requirement, that how do I want to manage my external transaction, or the order management related transaction. So in this case, let's take the order management transaction. So I have a sales order with, let's say, 10 lines. So how do I want to convert it into an invoice? So if you see here, so I have interface line attributes. So apart from that, I have other attribute as well. So if you see here, I can segregate based on the amount, or I can segregate based on the auto accounting rule. So accounting rule will be used when we have the revenue recognition and the other process. So in this case, what we can say is that whether if you wanted to use the currency, or if you wanted to use the special attribute that we will set up between our external system and Oracle Finance. So that we can define it here. Okay. So based on this particular combination, system will pick, and system is going to process it. So when this particular condition matches, so that is when system is going to pick, and it is going to process. So let's say we have maybe 100 operating unit. So in this case, let's say we wanted to process it for each operating unit, we can say maybe org ID, and we can process it. So similarly, we have other parameters as well. So based on this attribute column, we are basically generating the lines for the invoice. Okay. So after we create the line ordering rules, what we will do is that we will group this particular lines. So we will attach the line that we created in the earlier setup. So we give a name for it, and here if you see, so in this case they didn't attach it, but basically you can just attach here, and based on this we can make use of, or what do you call, the combining multiple lines, or however we wanted to manage, and this will allow us to group a particular invoice into one invoice or two invoice or multiple invoice. Okay. So after this we have something called auto accounting. So auto accounting is something that it will allow us to generate the account code combination without giving it. So because why do we need this option is that, so if you see here we have different account types, that is receivables, revenue, and freight, tax, and the other things. Okay. So in this case, so when we enter an invoice manually, so in this case I don't need the automation. So I can either enter it manually, or maybe if you provide me, I'll be very much happier to use it. But apart from that, this is not a blocker for me that I cannot use this particular functionality. But whereas when we use this transaction that is imported from different system, so that is when we will need the auto accounting, because system will not understand which account should I pick to process this invoice or import this invoice. So we will have all those validation in our interface table. So unless we give it here, so we'll not be able to process it. Okay. So we are giving it here. So for example, if you see, so I have multiple options. So either I can give it at transaction type. So when I say transaction type, so which means I'll not be able to generate the account code combination unless my transaction type has enough inputs on the account code combinations. Okay, similarly for the sales representative and the customer sites. So if you don't want to use this particular option, maybe we can use the constant. So that system will always generate this particular combination. So again, this is not mandatory to use either, I mean, only table or only constant value. So we can use either one of it. Okay, so this is what about the auto accounting. And then if you see, we have the transaction type. So in the transaction type, if you see, so we have for each transaction. So that is for invoice, we have for debit memo, credit memo, and we have for chargeback. Okay, so invoice is nothing but our common invoice that we know, and then we have debit memo and credit memo. So that is to adjust the invoices basically, whether it is in negative or positive. And then we have the chargeback. So chargeback is what we saw when we are looking at the system options. So that is when we saw that we wanted to have close this particular invoice and we wanted to open it. So for those cases, we can use the chargeback. So basically, we will define it here in the transaction type, and then we can use it in the actual transaction to knock off the outstanding dues or the invoice. Okay. So apart from that, we have something called deposit and guarantee. So there is a mild difference between the deposit and guarantee. So deposit is something, it involves the financial commitment, and in case of guarantee, it doesn't involve the financial impact. So whereas it will be a guarantee that I'll get so and so quantity or so and so amount in a given period, but I'll not deposit, or I'll not give any financial commitment to you. But whereas in case of deposit, I'll give the financial commitment that in this particular duration I'll get the quantity worth of, let's say, 1 lakh. So I'll deposit 1 lakh with you and I'll just adjust it every time. Okay. So that is the difference. And then we have bills receivable. So bills receivable is something that it is kind of an instrument where we will have the post dated entries. So this will have the payment instrument date and also it will have the maturity date. So both will not be same for most of the cases. So let's say the instrument date is 10th of November and the maturity date would be maybe 16th of November. So for those cases, we will use the bills receivable functionalities. So mostly for the post-dated check or other instrument that we have. Okay. Then we have the transaction status. So that is open, pending, or closed. So in this case, we wanted to use this. So I'll say open. So if I don't wanted to use this, I'll say closed. So in order to make this closed, I shouldn't have any open transaction for this transaction type. Okay. So these are the options that we have. And yeah, then we have the creation sign. So creation sign can be either positive or it can be negative. It depends on the transaction class that we are defining it here. So in case of invoice, it will be positive. So maybe if I select credit memo, it will be a negative. Okay. Then we have the printing option. So printing option is nothing but whether we wanted to print this particular invoice or we wanted to just have it as an electronic copy. Okay. And then we have open receivable. So this will be yes, and post to GL. So unless we enable this particular option, we'll not be able to post this invoices that we are creating to general ledger module. Okay. And apart from that, the others are common. So the adjustment posting and the other things. So yeah, so we have something called over application. So over application is something that if we wanted to get more than what is receivable, so that is when we say over application. Okay. And apart from that, we will give the account code combination. So here, if you see, we have receivables and revenue. So when we create an invoice, so the base accounting would be receivable to revenue. So that is getting picked up from the transaction type. So provided we have enabled the auto accounting, and in auto accounting we have specified this as a transaction type. Okay. Then apart from that, if you see here, we have two other. So others are understandable. So apart from that, we have two things. So that is unbilled receivable account and unearned revenue account. So unearned revenue and unbilled revenue will come in picture when we have what do you call the bill in advance or bill in arrear. So when we say bill in advance, so that is when we will use the unearned revenue. And this is kind of an Netflix scenario where we will pay for a given year or something like that. But whereas Netflix will not consider this as an one-time payment. So instead, what how they will recognize this is that they will take this as an different months or different periods and they will distribute it. So that defines based on the accounting rule that we have defined. Okay. So that is what about the unearned revenue. And similarly for invoice and RES, we have something called unbilled receivables. Okay. So so this is it about the transaction type. Yeah. Then we have the transaction source. Yeah. So why do we need transaction sources that to identify the transaction that is coming in from the external systems? So for the normal one, we might not need it. We can manage with the seeded one. But for the transaction that is coming from the external, basically we will specify the operating unit and we will give the transaction source, keeping that system. So let's say ASP is in system. So we will say ASP source. so that we can identify that these are the transactions that we have imported from the ASP system. So this will help us in terms of reconciliation at later point of time. So how are we identifying this particular transaction source is an imported one is that from the type. So if it is manual, so which means this invoice doesn't or it is just created inside the AR module. It is not imported from any other external system. But when we say imported, which means this has come from a different environment or different application. Okay. And then if you see here, we have two other options as well. So if you are using the batching numbering, we can use it here, or we can say automatic transaction numbering. So from this number, basically system will start generating the what do you call the transaction number or the invoice numbering. Okay. And then we have a copy document number to transaction number. So document number is nothing but our voucher number, or which will be used for the auditing purpose. So whether we wanted to utilize this. Okay. And we have allowed duplicate transaction number. So this will be always no. I mean, most of the cases it will be no. So unless some specific business case where we wanted to allow the duplicate transaction number. Okay. And then we have copy transaction information fetch field to credit memo. So let's say we use some DFF in the what do you call the invoice or the transaction screen. So when we are creating the credit memo for this particular transaction, so whether we wanted to capture the DFF also. So if you wanted to have, maybe we can enable this option. Okay. And then we have this one generate lines if in case of returns or the refunds. So how do we want to manage? So we have two options. So either we can refund it or we can have it on account. So refund is known process that will be routed to the AP module, and the other option is that on account. So on account is something that I'll keep it kind of an wallet, and for the later purchase, I'll adjust with the invoice that we are receiving. Okay, so that is the difference. And we have a reference flux field, this thing field value. So I just say interface attribute one, and I can attach the transaction type so that whenever I choose this particular transaction source, system is going to default this transaction type. Okay. And then I have the auto invoice options. So here if you see, so I have an invalid line. So how do I want system to handle this scenario? So either system wanted to give the warning or it wanted to give the reject. So most of the cases it will only reject. Okay.
Give me a minute. Huh?
Yeah.
No? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll start. Okay. So if you see here, so these are like the controls for the auto invoice. So in this case, mostly we will say reject invoice, because if you say create invoice, or if I wanted to import with the warning status, so in this case, even though the records are not correct, system is going to import it. So I will say reject invoice. And then I have GL date in closed period. So let's say we are in the period of let's say November, and the transaction that we are importing is on maybe October. So whether I wanted to import this or I wanted to reject this particular transaction. So I'll say reject. So if I say reject, which means the transaction will fail, or if I say adjust, which means system is going to adjust and it will say that this particular transaction will fall under the latest open period. So in this case, it is on the November period. So then I can decide whether I wanted to have this or no. But whereas when I say reject, which means system is going to reject this particular line. Okay. And then we have the grouping rule. So we are just attaching the same grouping rule. So this grouping rule is the one we saw for the auto invoice, that is line ordering and the grouping group. So we have created there and we are just attaching it here. And then we have details defaulting hierarchy. So this will be kind of an what do you call the hierarchy and the other configuration. So I have selected the parent of bill to customer. Okay. And yeah, and apart from that we have few customer information. So mostly we will use IDs to improve the performance. So since this is an vision environment, people have selected a name or the value. So similarly we will have for all other options as well. Okay. So this is about the transaction source. Then we have something called memo line. So what is memo line? So memo line will help us in terms of addressing the requirement where we will not have the items that we are selling to a customer. So maybe it might be a kind of a service to someone or some sort of service to the customer. So in this case, when it is an duck, mostly. So for this case, what we can do is that we can define a standard memo line and we can register our this thing service. So if you see here, so we have made a standard memo line for the 1 year support. So this is a service from our end. So I will just say, so this is the service and I'll say the unit price. So which means even there, if even if it is an this thing, just give me 1 minute. Hello.
Hello?
Yeah. So if you see, so this is the base price that we'll be charging for one what do you call one quantity of 1 year support, or we can say service in one quantity. Okay. So when I select the standard memo line, so this will be my revenue account. So anyway, the receivable account will be always same. So that will be picked either from the transaction type or the customer side based on our configuration. So apart from that, we have this revenue account. Okay. So then we have invoicing rule. So in this case, if you see, someone has taken this as an advance. So which means we will first do the service and then we will get the respective amount. Okay. So that is the understanding. And for this invoicing rule, basically we will have the accounting rule defined. So in this case, the rule that is set up is based on the month and for the year. Okay. So we can just pick this particular thing and we can do that. So this is the accounting rule. So if you see, so we have a month, 1 year. So which means if you see, so I have this particular support extended for 1 year. So this will be divided by 12 periods. So whatever the revenue that we are receiving. So on this particular 100 rupees or whatever the fee that we are collecting for the service, so that will be divided by 12 months. Okay. So this is about the accounting rule. So auto accounting rule is something that we saw earlier. Okay. Then we have payment terms. So payment terms will basically specify whether it should be recognized or it should be collected immediately from the customer, or we have a privilege to give it like 7 days, 14 days, or maybe 30 days. So here, how are we defining whether it is an 30 days or this thing is that? So we say that due days. So if you see here in end of the page or in the line level, so we have days. So we can even split out the amount into maybe if we are collecting 50%, so we can specify that also. So based on this, the discount will be calculated. If you see here, so here we can specify discount 1% discount if this is received on a specified days. So most of the cases it will not be date, because date will be used mostly for the ad hoc transactions. So for the regular transaction, mostly it will be days. So that on the given days, basically we will calculate the discount and we will apply for the transaction, and customer will get the discounted. Okay, so this is about the payment terms. Yeah, so that's all we have for the transaction related configurations. And apart from that, we have few configurations for the receipt. So to start with, we have receivable activities. So the receivable activity can be anything. If you see here, so we have adjustment, we have earned a discount, bank error. Anyway, we are not going to handle it. So apart from that, we have earned discount, unearned discount. So we saw what is earned discount, what is unearned discount. So we can use for that. And then if you wanted to use it for finance charge, then we have miscellaneous cash. So miscellaneous cash is something that we have two kinds of receipts. So one is standard, and the other one is the miscellaneous. So miscellaneous is something that it will not match with any of the invoice, or it will not have item or the service attached to it. So we will receive this as an additional revenue from the customer. So this is what we classify as a miscellaneous revenue. So those revenues will be recognized under miscellaneous cash of receivable activity. Okay. And then similarly we have okay, short term debt we have for the factoring. So for factoring, if you look at it, so we will not use basically for the Indian clients or the customers. So it will be used mostly for the US based business scenarios. So where we have this thing, uh, we have way of doing business where we will surrender our receipts and we will get the amount from the bank. So that is what we call factoring. So in this case, this factoring activity or the transaction that we are doing will be on short term in terms of accounting. So that is where we will use the short term debts. So for that purpose, we will need to define the short term debts. Okay. And then we have the receipt write off. So receipt write off we saw when we are seeing the system options. So basically, we will have to define it for the write-off, refund, and the chargeback and the other activities. Okay, so this will be at high level. And apart from that, here if you see, we have two options. One is GL account source. So that is the account that will be used when we basically use this particular functionality, adjustment or whatever it is. And after giving it, so we have the tax account. So whether we wanted to use this tax account basically for what do you call, if you see activity, So we will have the tax account defined. So basically we don't have EB tax that is defined. So we will not have value inside it. So if we have defined it, so we can pick it here as well. So for this particular receivable activity, we can utilize that. Okay. And then we have receipt class and receipt source. So we will see receipt class first, and then maybe we can see the receipt source. Yeah. So this is the receipt class configuration. So I just say this is the receipt class name, and here in creation method. So I say either receipt it is manual or it is an automatic. And apart from that, we have AP or AR netting. So what is AP and AR netting is that, so let's say I deal with the same customer for, so this particular entity will be my customer, and few cases this particular entity will be my vendor as well. So for these cases, what I can do is that I can create this as an API netting, and what I can do is that I can adjust and or I can knock off between the receivables and payables, and I can give the net of the amount that I have to pay to the this particular party. Okay, so that is what we call AP and AR netting. Okay. So basically, this automatic will create the receipts automatically. So when we are using the log pods and the other functionalities, so we can use that option. So apart from that, we have manual. So which means we are creating the receipts manually. And here, if you see, so we have four options totally. So when we say no remittance, so basically, when do we do remittance is that when we have bank interactions. So that is when we will use the remittance. So that is standard remittance. So which means I'm going to deposit my check or any kind of payment instrument in bank. So bank will verify and bank will process the payment. Okay. So this is what is standard. And factoring, we saw that we will surrender the receipt and we will get the short-term debts. So that is about factoring. And no remittance is that if you select this particular option, the basically system will pick directly. So which means I don't need to do any setup. System will directly say that this particular receipt is cleared. Okay. And then we have by matching and by automatic clearing. So when I say automatic clearing, by running the concurrent program, I'm going to clear this particular receipt. Okay. And then I have matching. So matching is something that I have the bank statement. So after remitting this particular check or whatever instrument that I have, so after this process, so basically I'll receive the bank statement from bank. So what I'll do is that I'll match this particular statement with the transaction that I did in AR. So after that, system will say that this particular transaction is cleared. So these are the multiple options that we have in the receipt class. Okay. So after that, we have an option that to add the bank account, or we can say this is a mandatory option. So what will happen is that I will attach the bank account, and after attaching the bank account, I'll give the relevant account code combinations here. Okay. So this is the thing for receipt class. So the final configuration would be on the receipt source. So receipt source is similar to our transaction source. So where we will have the name and we will say whether it is automatic or it is a manual. So after specifying that, so we will have the class that we defined in the earlier configuration. Okay. So after that, we will say the batch numbering and the other things. So after this, we can save this and we can close. Yeah. So we are done with our configuration. So probably I'll show the transaction part of it. So the navigation would be from transaction. If you go here, we have a navigation called transaction. Yeah. So I'm just selecting the default one. So if you see, this is manual consult, and we can see that our legal entity and the operating unit is vision operation that we selected when we are configuring the transaction type. Okay. So system has basically picked in. Okay. So I just select a single customer, and I'll just enter online. So I don't wanted to use the item because there are few issues running up. So I'll just use non-inventory item. So I'll give it manually. So I have specified one quantity, and the unit price is 100. And if I click the distribution, basically it will have account code combination for this account. So this is the account that system has generated based on the configuration that we have given. So we have set up the auto accounting rule. So based on that system is generating, this is the revenue account. Okay. Yeah. So after this, what we will have to do is that we should click this option called complete. Yeah. So this is completed. We can see it here that complete option is enabled. So which means this transaction is complete. And we can see here. So this is the original amount, and we didn't receive anything. So the balance is 100, same thing. So we will have the receipts and we will have the refunds, adjustment, all those things attached here. Okay. So this will be our simple transaction, and after creating our transaction, so this will be our option to print the invoice. So I click this particular option, and I'll show this on. Yeah. So if you see here, so this is the standard format that is given by Oracle. If you want to customize, we can customize this by adding our logos and the remarks columns, and by changing the fields and the formats. So we can do that. So this will be the option for taking the printout. So that will be from here. We can take that. Okay. So now we have created one transaction. Let's create the receipt. Okay. Okay. So I just supply my transaction number, and system populates automatically the customer number. So I just say apply, and I'll add the transactions, or I'll apply the invoice to the receipt. Okay, so we here we can see that the amount applied is 100, and the balance due is 8.25. So this is our tax amount basically. So I'm just saving this. Choices 12 is our this thing receipt number. So now we will go back to our invoice screen, and we will see the balance details. Okay. So if you see here, so the original invoice is line is 100, and the receipt that system has applied is 92.38, and the balance due that we have is 7.62. So this is because we have selected a method called the application method that used is line first and prorate tax. So that is why we have applied in this way. Okay. So this is based on the rule that we have given. System is going to apply the line and the this thing. So whatever invoice that we have selected. Okay. So any doubt? Yeah. So the account code combination also it has generated automatically. Okay. So to account this particular transaction, what I will do is that I'll just say tools. From tools, I can say create accounting. And after accounting, basically we can see the accounting entries here. So that is from tools, we can say view accounting. Okay. So we can see that the entries would be from cash debit and miscellaneous cash credit. So miscellaneous cash is nothing but our other revenues that we are generating from non-inventory items. Okay. So that's it on the receipt application. So we saw the standard receipt and we saw how it is reflecting in the transaction. And what else we have? Yeah. So we didn't see the customer creation, I think. Yeah, we will see this. Yeah. So yeah, you are seeing this screen, right? To create the customer. Yeah. So to create a new customer, what I'll do is that I'll say create. So when I say create, I have two things. So, so one is account and the other one is site. So for one customer, I can have multiple accounts. Similarly, I can have multiple sites. So here in this case, multiple site is nothing but our this thing, what do you call the different branch offices that we have for the customer. So we can define that here. Yeah. So let me take this called particular customer called ABC Insurance. Yeah. So if you see here, we have an account called 346122. So I have taken the profile class called default. So profile class is nothing but it will basically establishes an trustworthiness of the particular customer. So when we say this is an average for, basically we can segregate it. So that is what about the profile class. And then we have the bill to and ship to details. So bill to is mandatory and ship to that depends on our this thing when we are importing from the order management. So that is when we will need the ship to information as well. Okay. So we have just enabled these two options. And if you wanted to use or if you wanted to create a new site, we can say create a site. And for this particular account, basically we can create the site. Okay. So we can see that site is vision operations. So that is the one that we have access. And apart from that, by default, we have the bill to. So that I am just enabling this as primary. And if I wanted to add ship to, I'll just go here and add. And I can select from list of values as ship to. And I can say this as an primary. Okay. And I can say finish. So I'll have the site also defined for this particular customer. So apart from this, we have additional informations also like attaching the receipt method and the payment method and the instruments if you wanted to add, like you can see there are bank account transfer details. Okay, and this will be our late charge section. Yeah, so here in profile, basically we'll have the collector. So this will be a mandatory option. So we will have one employee attached as an collector. So this is just for a display purpose, but still we will have this option. Yeah, and apart from that, the others are only the controls over our receipts and the invoice and the payment terms. So here, since I have selected net 30, so when I use this particular customer called ABC Insurance, system will automatically pick that this particular customer will have payment terms of net 30. So similarly, we have other options as well where we can default. Okay, so this is about the customer creation and the site creation. Yeah. So if you have any doubt, we can see, or we can move to cash management.
Can see tomorrow, no?
Hello.
Oh, we can see cash manage tomorrow, no?
Yeah, yeah, fine, fine, anytime. I thought you wanted to see it today. Because Suresh pinged and group. Okay, no problem. We'll see it tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no problem.
it is overloading too much. So,
Yeah, yeah, even I felt the same, but I thought you wanted to see. Yeah, no problem. We'll see it tomorrow.
thanks, Arun.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah,
Thanks, man.
yeah, thanks.